seconds. Now, this segment of our program is being brought to you by the Suffolk County Police Benevolent Association. The PBA serves to support law enforcement, participate in special events and programs, all designed to help and protect our community. They care about you and keeping us all safe. From the anti-drinking and driving campaigns to protecting our children with education on the Megan's Law, PBA promotes a great relationship between the police and the people it's want to serve. Suffolk County is one of the safest counties in the country, and the PBA takes pride in its strong belief in our security. They have honored our fallen heroes and contribute greatly to our suburban way of life. Need to know more? Go right to that website, www.suffolkcountypba.org. Noel DiGirolamo, President. I'm telling you, we're not going to have a lot of opportunities this week. Tomorrow, preempted by the Islanders. I understand they won their first playoff game on Saturday, which means if they win Tuesday, tomorrow, and Wednesday, the next day, then we go back on the air on Friday. That's my understanding. If they lose one of those two games, then we will be preempted tomorrow, Wednesday, and Friday. So keep that in mind. I know a lot of the folks tune in to us and give us phone calls and listen and comment and so on. So I want everybody to know that we're all on the same page. And as you know, we are live streaming on Facebook right now. Your Island with Tom Schiliro. You could look and like us and follow us, and you could also comment. We usually read the comments over the air. We have a lot to talk about today, so we're going to try to get a lot in today. So we'll take phone calls up to the 2 o'clock hour, and it's always great when Anthony Coates, our senior contributor, coming into the studio to talk about a lot of different issues, and there is a lot out there. So I could just make it very, very brief. Let's not forget, wait, we got to say this Saturday, big rally. We want to make it the biggest in the country. It's the New York State Backs the Blue Ronkonkoma rally. They've been all over the place. Sayville had a big turnout last weekend, the weekend that just passed, but we want a big turnout for this one. The folks are coming out. 99.9% of the people here in Suffolk County love the police and are coming to the Back the Blue rallies. So this one is Saturday, August 8th. It's at Rayner County Park. That's 174 Ronkonkoma Avenue, Ronkonkoma. The rally starts at 11 a.m. LI News Radio is going to be a very, very important part of this. We're hoping to be broadcasting live. I will be emceeing the event. So I'd like to meet a lot of the folks who listen to our midday program. I will be there. I believe Michael Scudero might be there. Who knows? Many of our different listeners will be there also. So that's just a reminder. We will remind towards the end of the show. And just very briefly, before we get Tony jumping in, Portland, as you know, they had a terrible night. That's all I want to say. I mean, it's ridiculous. 200 people were rioting. They were pointing lasers at the officers, throwing bottles, and they were blocking traffic. So it's not over. 66 straight days in Portland. And New York City, let's not forget the great Big Apple. 85% less narcotics arrests, 90% less arrests in general, and overall crime is up about 62%. Shootings there. So this is the update, folks, that you get on Monday. It stinks. Portland, New York, Louisville, Chicago, Detroit, it's not working. Defunding is not working. Not backing the police is not working. What is working is the Back to the Blue rallies. That's working. The more we go, the more we yell, the more we exercise our First Amendment rights, it gets better. Tony Coates, what the heck is going on in this country, Tony?
Portland, we heard you. Go home. Your voice has been heard. Do something productive. Let the city move forward.
Amazing.
It's it's a number of these protests. It's like we kind of get it. There's evidence that there's agitators on. I don't want to sound like the president, but on both sides that have kind of now hijacked this thing and sort of made it their own, and sort of they just keep grinding for their own purpose. But I think Portland's voice has been heard. We know where people sit, and it's time to move forward. And
those are the good protests. It was about 100. I was watching Portland over the weekend. There was 100 peaceful protests. They were by the courthouse, and it was during the day. Everybody was nice to one another. They were saying hello to the police. They moved away. And then 200 showed up later on, and they were doing those lasers. Very dangerous. Pointing lasers at the eyes of police. These are what I call criminally minded individuals. These are criminals. These are not protesters. They're rioters. They're arsonists. They're looters. They're all of that. And they're seeking damage to the police. And I've been urging people to get on that YouTube channel and see some of this firsthand from on-the-scene video that's coming from it. You get a really good idea. There's no interviews. You could watch what's going on. They had a guy there that one of the local stations was interviewing, and you could clearly see. You don't have to take a course on reading somebody's body language. This guy was clearly clearly lying. And he kept complaining that the police hit him. They were abusing him. He was peacefully protesting. And then about a few minutes later, somebody posted a video of the same guy setting a fire.
Yeah, I'm all for peaceful protesting, but I think what happens is we've now reached a point of no return where this just brings out freelance crazies who just want to latch on to this and in the name of peaceful protesting not be so peaceful. Look, the Seattle situation, the CHOP, that was your petri dish that basically showed that this lawlessness can't continue. And that when people are left to kind of self-govern with no police and no enforcement, that it doesn't turn out well. And so let's leave that in the rearview mirror. Let's move forward and let's come together as a country and defeat this virus. You know, I heard something on my way in. I wasn't listening to LI News Radio at this moment, but I heard something that in England they're releasing today close to 10 million tests that are all coming back within 90 minutes. And that's what Britain is doing right now to get to stamp out the next wave that could possibly come there. Let's spend our time on that, folks, rather than spending our time on. We all got your point. We get it, but it's time for us to move on and conquer the problems in front of us.
Well, CNN reports this stuff. They're reporting the fires and the laser beam things, but they title their story "The Fight for Racial Equality." The fight for racial equality. I have a tough time with that when you see what's going on in the injury to our police officers, which happen to be racially mixed, by the way. Let's not forget that. What kind of journalism is
We might have left the fight for racial equality back a few mile markers ago. Yeah. It may now have devolved to where it's just freelance protesting for the sake of protesting and people trying to advance other causes that have nothing to do with the original intent. You want to fight for racial equality? Do it in legislative bodies in Oregon and do it here in New York. And
but that's
do it
the
in
narrative
Washington.
By the press. And you've been a press guy.
Yep,
that's the narrative. They're saying this is the fight. It's not the fight for racial equality. Anybody could clearly see that. It's really a bunch of thugs and a bunch of misguided individuals who, can I use the word losers, that are out there fighting and they're out there causing riotous action. Where is the fight for racial equality?
You raise an interesting point, Tom, that I don't think gets talked about nearly enough, is that they call it the chyron. That type that's underneath the photo on news broadcasts. There was no such a thing all the way up until 9/11. And then remember, 9/11, they did the crawl because the news was coming so fast that they had to have a graphic up there at all times. And now the graphic is up there at all times. And you know what? It sometimes sways people who just either have the sound off or are walking through someplace and they see a TV on. And sometimes the chyron, the caption underneath the story, doesn't even fit the story. And so I think as consumers of the news, people should be aware that whatever's printed underneath isn't always the story. That's somebody in the control booth's version of the story. I think you raise a good point.
631-451-1039. A few minutes left of this segment, but we are taking phone calls up to the 2 o'clock hour, and we're just going to be talking about everything. I want to talk a little bit about local politics. Over the weekend, I spoke to some members of the Democratic Party, and I told them that we would like to have everybody on who's running for the state Senate, state assembly, for Congress, and so on. Get everybody on, Democrats and Republicans, of course. And Republicans are very eager to come on, Tony Coates. And this is kind of makes me a little upset, is because I want a fair and balanced program. I want to be able to put the issues out there in a very partisan way. To my surprise, I'm getting a little stuttering. I hate to say this, Tony. Get a little stuttering when I speak to them in regard to defunding of the police and what needs to be done. And it's almost like they don't want to admit it, but there is some tepid backing of what you see happening in the city. And I'm a little surprised because communities like Patchogue and Selden and Lake Ronkonkoma, they're not Manhattan. And I'm a little concerned. Now, you're a political strategist. This is delicate territory we're talking about, Tony Coates.
Yeah, you and I happen to, from social media, I know that you're talking to Laura Jen Smith, who's running out in the second AD. I know
she's coming on Thursday.
And I know she held a press conference, and I know she talked about those issues and is not for defunding the police. But you and I have talked about this a number of times here, that the parties tend to pick from their most extreme sides. And I think that I'll talk as a strategist. I think that any candidate who, it's sort of the big three. If you are for defunding the police, if you didn't stand up on the bail reform package, and if you are a big backer of Mayor de Blasio and you happen to be a Democrat and you don't get how you need to separate yourself from that, you may as well not leave your lawn chair. I don't know if you're up at Cupsog Beach today or what, but don't bother, because that ain't going to sell here in the suburbs. So whether you have D next to your name, R, C, L, I, no matter what you have next to your name, if you're going to be backing the leadership of Bill de Blasio, if you don't get how bail reform was a problem, and if you're for defunding the police, don't bother.
All right.
Stay,
I want to explore
stay
that.
on vacation.
I want to explore that because it's interesting coming from you as a strategist. We're going to take a short break. I'm your host, Tom Schiliro. Taking phone calls, folks. 631-451-1039. We'll be right back. Florida's getting worse by the day. Okay, Rashida Tlaib, she's got a primary challenge tomorrow. Ilhan Omar, I think it's next week. They have very well-funded challenges. Your thought on that? And then, of course, AOC won hers. Let's start with that. The following are the words of Noel DiGirolamo, president of the Suffolk County Police Benevolent Association.
Police officers are already being targeted for assassination. Releasing their personal information to criminals will only further endanger them. Stand with law enforcement. Defend the police.
The following radio show is live, except for the announcement you're hearing right now.
Welcome back to Your Island Live with your host, Tom Schiliro, on 103.9 LI News Radio.
And once again, welcome back to our Monday edition, short week. Folks, just keep in mind, Tuesday, Wednesday, preempted by the Islanders. I'm Tom Schiliro. You're listening to Your Island here on 103.9 LI News Radio. Tony Coates in the studio talking politics, talking the national events, talking about back to the blue rallies, just literally trying to possibly unite this country behind something. And we're talking about also Democrats, Republicans. Where do they stand on all of these issues and how important this campaign is? And that pretty much outlines the whole show. 631-451-1039, taking your phone calls. Back to the politics part of this. Interesting what you said, you know, in terms of like you really, it's almost like you got to get a pulse of the people, Tony Coates. And I think a lot of these Democrats that I'm speaking to don't have this pulse, unless I'm just one-sided. Maybe I'm wrong, folks. I don't know. 631-451-1039. Get Tony.
Well, I think if your original comment was on backing the blue, and yes. I think that any Democrat, Republican out here in Suffolk County that isn't backing the blue, as I said, tune in the Islanders tomorrow, right? They're going to be playing, or stay at your beach chair at Cupsog, or I don't know, they have pretty good tacos down at Swell Tacos in Babylon. Go grab those because you ain't going nowhere. I think the big three, as I said earlier when we went to the break, is if you're in the camp of Bill de Blasio, if you don't get what the problem was with bail reform, and if you think that the police need to be defunded, you're going to have a really, really tough time getting your kayak moving forward here in Suffolk County.
Yeah, I mean, and that's pretty much it, but we're going to have to see. We're going to be spending some time talking to candidates between now and November 3rd. I've always believed if you run for public office, if you're in Suffolk County running for public office, you pretty much got to have a pulse on what the political winds are. It's much different running in Suffolk County than it is in some districts in Queens, Bronx, and Brooklyn, although I've been through some districts there, and they're just as conservative as they are out here.
Well, you know, Suffolk County, it's funny. It's a very interesting place, and we'll lump NASA in there, too, is that the enrollment actually favors Democrats.
It does.
Which wasn't true when I was a kid. It was 2-1 Republican. But it's a certain kind of Democrat that wins out here. It's really, service, constituent-oriented Democrats. The 1st Congressional District, for instance, saw Otis Pike forever. When he was really swimming against the tide. He retired in 1978. And since then, it's been a litany of sometimes Republican, sometimes Democrat. But when it's had Democrats, they generally have been, look at a guy like George Hochbruckner, who was very constituent-oriented, had a long time in the state assembly, was really kind of a down-the-road individual who worked hard for his people, and had a real defense bent. He had come out of being a Mustang engineer in the Grumman days. That's a kind of Democrat that does well out here. You have folks like, I'll hit a golf ball up north and say Steve Englebright, my state assemblyman, very identified with the environment, has very strong position. You have a number of Democrats who've done very well because they're identified with their community and being an anchor to the pulse of their community. If you're looking to beat a challenger and or hang on as an incumbent, those are 3 really tough positions to have this year.
Just know what the folks want. 631-451-1039. Vinny from Bayport. Vinny, what say you?
What's going on, guys? Happy Monday. Was listening to the show. I just wanted to share, with you what I deal with every day, every week, every month. I work with a very large company. I'm out there, talk to thousands of people a week. Okay. All right. There's no such thing as racial inequality. No such thing at all. Racial injustice, white privilege.
Well, tell that to CNN, because that's how they're billing. That's how they're framing this whole thing as the fight for racial equality. No, it's actually called the fight against the cops. That's what it is. That's what it is.
You're exactly right. You're exactly right. In fact, the movement, the Black Lives Matter movement, it's, in my opinion anyway, it's a myth. It's a politically motivated myth. The entire premise is a farce, and I see it every day. And what blows me away is the media has done such a great job that they got the NFL to give the finger to millions of white people, millions of white season ticket holders, and said, your life doesn't matter. Okay, I'm going to redesign the helmets. I'm going to redesign the stadiums for black people. Yeah. Just please buy my ticket. It makes me sick. And speaking of, speaking of the media, did you guys hear about this illegal alien who drove his van into 3 members of a motorcycle gang out in California? The blue line killed them.
I didn't hear that.
I mean, why isn't that news?
I gotta look at that. Yeah. Well, a lot of this stuff is not new. It's deemed not news by the editors of MSNBC and CNN, Washington Post, New York Times, San Francisco newspapers, L.A. Times, and so on. They make those decisions of what they cover and what they don't cover. How are you seeing these backing the blue rallies throughout Long Island? You're not seeing that much of it. But if 50 people want to take down the statue, I should back that up. 28 people want to take down the statue of William Floyd on the William Floyd Parkway. That's like the big story. And it's something that is done not fair, not balanced, but in a very improper, unequitable way. And we're seeing that.
I know you guys got to toe a fine line here, and I understand that, but we all know what's going on. I was watching Obama during this. It was supposed to be a eulogy.
The eulogy.
It looked like a political campaign. He told a room packed full of people, that rooms packed full of people are unsafe when you go to vote.
Yeah.
Well, wait a minute. There was 130, 200 people in a room, and he told that same room you can't vote like that.
Yeah.
It's just stupid. You know?
All right. Appreciate it. Thanks, Vinny.
Thanks, guys.
Appreciate it. I want to get to that eulogy that the President Obama delivered over at John Lewis's funeral, but let's get to Andrew from Lake Grove first. Go ahead, Andrew. You're on the air.
How you doing, Tom?
Good.
How you doing, Tony?
How are you?
2 points. We keep on wondering about the press and what they're reporting, but you got to understand is one day maybe we'll be able to unpeel the onion of, like, in what levels who's in cahoots with who. But if the press and everybody keeps on saying that basically peaceful protests, what the rioters are doing is they're working right out of the Alinsky playbook. So the press is never going to say what they're doing is bad. The press has to stay with that, because the rioters aren't going to stop. They're not there to peacefully protest. They're there to riot, and they're there to break down, public decency and law and order.
Yeah. Well, you tell me. I'm hung up on the lasers because I was watching it a little bit last night on how they're focusing those laser beams on the eyes of police officers that are just literally trying to protect property. And where does that fall into any definition of anything under our Constitution other than the criminal procedure laws? That's the only thing I can think of.
They just, like I keep on saying, like I told you last week, I'm a broken record. They've left us.
Yeah.
And they're not gonna change. We just have to hope there's more us than them. But on the other part, if the police really don't have what they need now to break down at least the Seattle and the Portland organizations, then we know it's all political. Because you've been a police, and all these alphabet of law enforcement, the DOJ, the FBI, and all that, if they don't have what they need right now on the ground to go ahead and bust up at least some of the local organizations, then we're in real trouble, or it's real political. And hopefully, when these officials went and met with the governor of Oregon last week, hopefully things were said, and I wouldn't doubt that they have communications between the mayor and the governor and some of these elements. Yeah. But if they can't go down and break this up, then we're in really bad shape because it's right under their nose.
Yeah, well,
you
speak the truth, Andrew. It's trying to get it to that point. I want to take some more calls. Andrew, thank you so much. Our number here is 631-451-1039. I'm with Tony Coates. Getting this discussion going. A lot to talk about. Joe from Ridge. What do you say, Joe?
Yeah, Tom, I really don't understand why you want to give a Democrat a forum. I got to tell you that the people that we have elected as Democrats in this county may be Democrats in name, but a lot of them follow the Republican mantras, and they are no account to the rest of the Democratic Party,
right,
because they're not the ones who are running the show. And the people that are running the show that call themselves Democrats, that want to defund the police and want to do this and want to do that, that's the real enemy. We can't have any Democrats in this county.
Yeah.
I really believe that.
Your point is that they're beholden to a higher authority, whether it's the governor or whether it's de Blasio or the state Democratic Party. I'm getting that's your point. But my point is simple as this, that we're going to have that choice November 3rd. I think it's very important that we know. I want to be as fair and balanced as we can possibly can and not be accused of going one side or another. But I'm not hearing so much from that side. I have no problem asking a Republican, how do you feel about defunding the police? I know the answer I'm going to get. I know what's going to happen Saturday at our Backs the Blue rally. I know what's going to happen. The Republicans are going to show up. They're going to literally preach what they believe in. It's what pretty much we all believe in, is that our police have to be supported. So you're right about that, but I still think it's important to be fair and balanced and to give everybody an opportunity. But I do understand what you're saying, Joe.
That's fine. Thank you, Tom.
Thanks for the comment. Just weigh in on that. I want to get to
I think you've raised it earlier, and I think it's a very legitimate thing to look at this year are people who back the blue, who understand that bail reform needs reform, who are not for defunding the police and speak out against Bill de Blasio and aren't an appendage of New York City. Are those Democrats going to get caught in a tidal wave because they're going to perceive, or people are going to perceive them that they won't stand up to the assembly majority in the city?
Waves. Yeah. You know, right now the two major issues among Democrats running for the state Senate in Nassau and Suffolk County, and we have 6 Democratic state senators, we only have 3 Republican state senators, and 1 seat is open, is bail reform. They're looking at that very closely. Yeah. The initial bail reform. Who brought us that? Did you folks, Long Island Democrats running for the state Senate, did you vote in favor of bail reform? That's a question that you have to answer.
And I think what you'll find is that folks like Jim Gorn and Monica Martinez and the like have spoken out against bail reform.
But they voted for it.
But they voted for it, or Monica Martinez submitted a bill to reform bail reform. But, the problem is going to be that folks are going to say, you Democrats, they're gonna lump them with the city, and it's a tide you're gonna have to swim against.
You can't be for something, then vote against it, and then say you're for it. You can't do that.
Sure you can. That's what politics is all about.
Yeah, but the folks out there are listening and said, we don't like the damn bail reform. So if you have Long Island Democrats that voted for it, you've got to take that into consideration. In addition to that police reform package, 50A is a disaster. Okay, the literally abolition of the 50A, the civil service law, that now allows in certain circumstances to release the records of police. And they are pointing directly to that individual that went to the federal judge's house and shot the son, the 20-year-old son, directly related to the fact that individual was able to find out a lot of personal information about that federal judge.
That's right.
And today her son is dead. Over that. So we could relate that as the second cousin or the first cousin to the abolition of 50A, and that was voted by Democrats.
I have to say that while bail reform may have started off well-intentioned, that there were people who had less means who were stuck in jail for minor crimes because they couldn't come up with money, boy, did it go off the rails. Is that
you could have dealt with that?
Yeah, they took discretion away from judges. It just
not to increase the crime rates over it. Exactly. Chris over in East Richards. Hey, Chris, you're on the air.
Hey, Tom. Great to hear you guys today.
Thank you.
So you mentioned Mr. Obama's speech.
Yes.
Not speech, so-called eulogy.
Eulogy, yes.
Well, I was listening to it. I think I was at work, and I actually heard it on the radio. And then I went back to do some more work, and I said in my mind, I said, it kind of sounds like something Al Sharpton would say,
Yeah.
And I didn't think anything of it until later on that evening. I was sitting on my back patio, knocking back a couple of beers, and lo and behold, on Patriot Radio, Larry Elder told me exactly what I was thinking. It was a speech like Al Sharpton, a little bit more polished, but it was basically Al Sharpton rhetoric coming out of Barack Obama's mouth.
Yeah.
So, I just got to have to lump him into that group of, leftists who are just full of hatred now,
I was disappointed in it too. I want to get Tony's thoughts. We're trying to get to that subject. So many things just keep popping it up. But you're right about that. I was disappointed in it myself because he's an eloquent speaker and he could have. But to literally bridge the horrific laws that took place during the Jim Crow era, 1950s and 60s, and the Bull Connors and the George Wallaces, and link that to today, the third decade of the 21st century, and say that's what they're fighting for today, really is a disservice. And I felt that the former president didn't really need to go there, and whether he was correct or not, it's going to be up to all of us. Chris, thank you. Appreciate it. Thanks for calling in. What do you think about that? I mean, the President Obama did do that. He brought up Bull Connor. Then he brought up Minneapolis. Okay, he trying to make that bridge between Bull Connor and literally that horrific individual that snuffed out the life of George Floyd, and many of us feel that was a grave. In fact, not many of us, just about everybody you talked to felt that what happened in Minneapolis was an injustice. But to literally bridge that gap between Bull Connor, George Wallace, which was systemic racism back then, and I think we've wiped it out now. Was the former president correct? Should he have done what he did at John L. Lewis's eulogy?
John R. Lewis, actually. John Robert Lewis.
Yeah, John Robert Lewis. I'm sorry.
I will only answer it this way. I have given eulogies about individuals, and I've talked about the individual. Is that I watched that live, and I don't think you're delivering a eulogy. I think make that person the story. Don't try to carry this. I wouldn't have been political. I think that Obama, look, you know where he stands. John Lewis was a rabble rouser and got into what he liked to call good trouble. So I don't think John Lewis would necessarily have a problem that politics was spoken at his funeral. But personally, I found that I wouldn't politicize somebody's death. I think that President Obama has every opportunity via whatever social media or media he wants. I wouldn't have clouded somebody's funeral with that.
And can't we make the point that John Lewis was literally glorified because of what he did when he was beaten on that bridge on the March to Selma, when they were going for voting rights and all of that, because not only did African Americans couldn't even vote in many of those instances, they couldn't run for public office either. But look where he ended up as a result of his efforts. Can't you glorify his work? Literally resulted in him being elected as a member of the House of Representatives?
I think the speakers, by and large, did do that, is to look, we're all imperfect beings, and Obama started his speech, I thought, right, is that he said, in the words of Jefferson, that all of our struggle is to make it a more perfect union. And that's really the story of John Lewis, is that, keep in mind, we're talking about protests. Those are peaceful protests. It was the police that were the provocateur and all of that. And in many cases, the civil rights workers held up their arms. So those people sacrificed with their bodies, with their blood, with their every fiber of their being. And John Lewis, half a century later, wound up a revered member of the Congress. That's a story that I would tell about John Lewis.
But you can't bridge that time period. You can't bridge Bull Connor to what's happening today by the police departments throughout this country that are doing their job. The police chiefs of people of color who are running our cities, are running our police departments. All of that has been part of that evolution of our democracy, and then literally make that comparison. I think he did a disservice.
If I wanted to talk about the movement to curb mail-in voting, which is, I think, what the most talked about quote from the Obama eulogy is about, I would have found a different forum to do it.
Okay. All right. Good point. 631-451-1039. James from Calverton. James, what do you say?
I think you're missing the whole point of all this. You keep saying that we'll settle this when we have the election, the bail reform and stuff. The presidential election isn't going to settle it because it's all by the states.
Right. Well, there's a state election, though, James. You're voting for the state Senate, state assembly.
Exactly the way it is. That's not going to change. What I wanted to talk about real quick is the sanitizers that people are putting on their hands. 99% of them are toxic chemicals, carcinogenic compounds, and that's going to be the next epidemic in this country. Kids are going to have cancer. Everybody's going to have cancer from these sanitizers.
Okay. Well, Thanks, James. Appreciate it. I hope we don't have to deal with that. I got enough dealing with coronavirus and the injustices against our police department. You hear anything on that?
I have not. I know that I watched or listened to a podcast over the weekend, and they were outlining the litany of including obesity and bad eating that's coming out of this too. So folks need to know that. Look, the amount of folks who have heart issues or chronic problems that haven't been able to get to a doctor because we're in a shutdown for anything but corona, this disease or virus is taking a huge toll.
Okay, when we get back, 631-451-1039. We'll be taking your phone calls. I'm Tom Schiliro. You're listening to Your Island here, 103.9 LI News Radio. I'm with Tony Coates, one of our senior contributors here every Monday. Take a short break. We'll be right back.
showtime.
It's time for that radio show everyone loves.
Do not attempt to change the station. Just listen, and we'll keep broadcasting.
Time to begin the show.
1039 LI News Radio presents Your Island, the very best in talk radio, with your host, Tom Schiliro.
And once again, welcome back. 1 hour to go in our midday program right here on a Monday. This segment of our program is being brought to you by the Suffolk County Police Benevolent Association. The PBA serves to support law enforcement, participate in special events and programs, all designed to help protect our community. They care about you and keeping us all safe. From the anti-drinking and driving campaigns to protecting our children with education on the Megan's Law, PBA promotes a great relationship between the police and the people it's sworn to serve. Suffolk County, as we well know, one of the safest counties in the country, and the PBA takes pride in a strong belief in our security. They have honored our fallen heroes and contribute greatly to our suburban way of life. Need to know more? Go right to that website, www.suffolkcountypba.org. Noel DiGirolamo, president, talking about just about anything, what's going on across the country, what's going on across Long Island, what's going on in the city, all of this stuff. Crime rates are up. We keep talking about this over and over and over again. And the latest news was crime is up over the weekend in New York City. Not anything new. Talking a little bit about politics, too. How is that going to transcend itself? How are the different political parties dealing with the major issues of the day? And if you use this show as literally an indicator, certainly the bail reform was a big issue that a lot of people weighed in on, and the question is, can that dictate how people vote? Sometimes you think about it, and you say, well, I'd never vote for somebody that voted for the bail reform to put the criminals out there, or voted for defunding of our police and taking away certain equipment. But then at the same time, people end up voting for the individual because they like the individual. They may not like the policies. And our number here is 631-451-1039. Tony, what about that? You know, they always say people don't like Congress, but they reelect their member of Congress.
Boy, that's true. So much of this revolves around the ability to raise money, and the money allows you to get your message out, and never underestimate the power of incumbency. After a member of Congress is elected for that first re-election, the numbers go up. It's something like 98.6. It's around our body temperature for that first re-election, and then after that, it goes up to almost fever. Is that it's about 99% of those who have served 2 terms go on to serve a 3rd and a 4th and a 5th, and basically command the seat for as long as they can until they face a well-funded challenger. Money's hard to come by in politics, and especially this year. So it's an incumbents game. That's why incumbents win, and they command the dialogue, they command the finances, they command the airwaves, they command the mail, and incumbents do very well for themselves. It's going to be interesting. You referred to Tlaib in Michigan,
Yes, right, yeah.
and Omar in Minnesota. Now, both of them have very well, remember, this is the first for the squad.
Yes.
This is the first re-election that all of those folks
Well,
will
AOC
face.
got through hers.
So she's, walked through the turnstiles, won her primary handily, and she doesn't have a major challenger. It's a very Democratic district. So tomorrow on the ballot will be Tlaib in Michigan and Omar in Minnesota. And they have very well-funded opponents because there's a lot of folks from outside the area that are willing to pony up money to try and knock either one of them off. And so we will see what the outcome is. I think those races right now are polling, somewhere around the 50-50 mark. But it all becomes a question of, are you able to pull your vote? And I think that the polls sometimes in these primary situations are a little tough because you don't know who's coming out and voting. So in a broad-based phone call to your house, if you're a Democrat, you might say, yeah, I don't like Omar, for instance. But the question is, are you going to be one of those people who stands in line and or fills out your ballot to be stand and counted that day? So we'll see. But it's the second wave now of folks who are part of the squad, and we'll see whether they emerge and win. If they win their primaries, they'll win their generals.
And these are people that said these are members of Congress that said some pretty outrageous things. Of course, many of us won't forget the Ilhan Omar reference to 9/11. Now, she said this before she was elected, but she did say, some people did something Okay, she wasn't there. She didn't see the horrific devastation and tragedy that people here in New York had to experience. But for her to say that, certainly that tug at the heartstrings of many of us who literally saw it firsthand. And but beyond that, the question is this, and this is what I think a lot of people have a tough time with. They can't understand how a Rashida Tlaib or Ilhan Omar or Jay Appel get elected, as well as AOC. Now, AOC shows 72% of the vote. Unbelievable. Against a well-funded challenger in her district, a more centrist Democrat. Yeah. Well, they came out to vote for her. Tomorrow they're going to vote for Tlaib. Probably will win. Do you concur?
Yeah, I think, again, the odds are with incumbents always, and I think they're both pretty well organized, and they're also well-funded.
Okay, over the weekend, again, our number here is 631-451-1039, I saw Jamal Bowman being interviewed by CNN. He just won the primary against Eliot Engel. Now, how long has Eliot Engel represented the state of New York in the House of Representatives? A long time.
I guess the people thought too long.
Yeah, well, he then he had an important chairmanship. I can't remember which one he had. Just a lot of seniority. What you said, 95% get reelected. Well, he did not get reelected.
That's right.
He was defeated pretty handily by Jamal Bowman, who literally part of the same organization that brought us AOC. When he was interviewed on CNN, he thought of AOC, they asked him about her, as literally that she is the God. She is the one that we're going to follow. So a male version, folks, I'm going to tell you right now, a male version of AOC has been elected out of New York City. His name is Jamal Bowman. Very similar to AOC in thoughts. Whole idea of socialism and how important that is, and he espoused these ideas, and yet he won handily in his district. I think Eliot Engel was Brooklyn.
Well, Eliot Engel didn't help his cause because Eliot Engel was at a public forum and on a hot mic, an open mic, said something like, well, I wouldn't even be here, but I have a primary, so I guess I have to show up. Okay. And so that didn't help him. And so when you've got somebody nipping at your heels who says that you're an out-of-touch incumbent who really doesn't come back to the district anymore, and you're caught in a pants-down moment, it's not helping you. But I think your bigger point is accurate, is that, look, I think when it comes to the polls, I've spent millions of dollars on polls, and it wasn't spent for the heck of it. They're a good barometer of the moment in time that you take them, and you have to know how to read polls. In 2016, I think people read what they wanted to read in the polls. I thought Donald Trump would win, and yet Hillary Clinton was operating the margin of error. Comey came out with his statement, and everyone said Hillary had a 99% chance of winning. I didn't agree, and everyone was proven wrong. But that doesn't mean polls don't mean squat. They mean a lot. In this particular case, we've got to remember that there are places a lot different than we are. So Bowman and AOC and Nancy Pelosi and I'll pick another liberal member of Congress, all represent their communities, and the people are in tune with those members of Congress.
Defies what you and I both agreed, that they may not like the Congress, but they like their congressman. Now, of course, you cited an example that messed up Eliot Engel. The same thing with AOC's incumbent that she beat. For some reason, the name escapes me. I don't know if you remember the name. But
AOC?
Yeah, AOC.
Crowley,
yeah, that's right. And I met him, too. And the whole idea was that he kind of took that. This is a
Well, Joe Crowley was out here raising money for candidates out here for Congress that year.
Right.
He was up in the Hudson Valley raising money, and she was saying, "Where are you, Joe?" And so she caught him napping.
In one way, it's a good thing because it shows that the voters are astute and say, well, we don't like this arrogance. So we're going to vote for somebody that is about as far left as it can be, socialist can be. So AOC is out there. She's saying some pretty crazy things and so on, particularly on the defund issue and particularly on our prison issues, the criminal justice system, economic system, the Green New Deal, which, again, a lot of people look at as really the prescription for socialism. But this guy Bauman is no different. So are we really to believe that the people of the district are that far left, or they just don't like arrogance?
Well,
and you're the guy there.
Yeah, I think it's a bit of both. Is that for you, me, Michael, we bleed dark Yankee blue.
Right.
You go get on the ferry and you get off over in New London, Connecticut, and as you're unloading your car, it's like heresy. There's Red Sox hats there. And so you say to yourself, how the hell could they like the Red Sox? Well, you know what? That's what we as voters have to get used to, is that there are other parts of the country they feel much differently than we do.
Okay, I'm going to flip you the curveball now because we're using baseball.
As long as we're talking baseball.
Yeah, baseball. Now, you get a candidate like running for the state. The re-election of the Democratic state senators in Nassau and Suffolk County. All right, they didn't vote what I believe is what the people in Suffolk County want. Yet, if you had to ask me, whether we're talking about Brooks or Gorin or Martinez and so on, they didn't vote the right way. They tried to backpedal it. Remember, for something, vote against it and say you're for it. And that's a deception there. Yet, if I had to bet the $3 in my pocket right now, I would say they'll get reelected. And it doesn't have that same impact that it did in the Bauman race and the AOC race.
Because I think when you have an incumbent, when you have a challenger, they don't know a lot about that challenger, and that challenger basically has to jump through hoops and tap dance to get known. When they see an incumbent, they take over the full body of that incumbent's work, number one. And number two, let's face it, in a low attention span world, in a low information, locally political world, you know incumbents, so it's the name brand you know. So
But Crowley was known. Yeah. Engels was known.
Well, I think those are examples of people that really got caught asleep at the switch. Very, very difficult to do. Look, someone challenged Tom Suozzi. They thought they were going to catch Tom Suozzi sleeping. How'd that work out? It didn't. And so those are the rarities. AOC is an absolute rarity. And to go back to Bowman, there are a group of people who, I don't want to use the word disciples because that's a supercharged word, but there are a group of people who were in lockstep with AOC because she's encouraged a number of people to run primaries against longtime incumbents.
Well, she organized it.
Right. To
she
try
organized it.
And at every level. And so she's trying to make incumbents earn their keep. And if you live in her district or you're of her ideology, you probably think that's a good thing because she's keeping incumbents on their toes. If you're not, you probably think
she's
it's a bad thing.
She's defeating incumbents. She defeated 5 moderate members of the New York State Assembly in their primaries upstate New York.
That's right.
Doug Smith told me that. I said, look, I had some moderates that I could talk to on the Democratic side. Well, the far left was able to take these seats. You have to give her credit. She plays hardball. Everybody else is playing softball. I mean, she does not mess around, and she has the ability to raise millions of dollars from the far left to take out the Elliot Engels.
And so if you're Chuck Schumer, you might say to yourself, objects in your rearview mirror are closer than they appear.
Or Kirsten Gillibrand.
Yep.
I think she's up next. Isn't she up next?
I think she.
Yeah, 6'3".
No, I think Schumer's up next.
Okay, yeah, I think that you might be right. 631-451-1039. We've got Jeff over there in Middle Island. Hey, Jeff.
Yeah, how you doing, guys?
Good. Hey, Jeff.
Call in. Yeah, Tony, how are you?
Good. How are you?
Yeah, I'm enjoying the show. Let me just make a couple of quick comments. Just before I took a quick look at Rasmussen, I don't know if you follow.
I that's the only poll I look at. They seem to be the most accurate.
Well, he's got Trump's approval up to 51%.
Yes.
Yeah. And strongly approve at 40%. And both of those show an increase of what it's been over the last number of days. I think Trump is starting to increase in the polls in terms of favorability. And I think that at the same time, I think the Democrats have overplayed. Tony, I think that the Democrats have overplayed their hand somewhat. And I think that was
I'd agree.
In Obama's speech. Obama was taking the Senate as well as the presidency. And I think it got to him. Not that I'm trying to defend him, because I really wouldn't. As far as I'm concerned, he's not to be defended. But nevertheless, I think the Democrats are starting to realize that this is not going to be a cakewalk. I mean, either they may have convinced themselves with these fake suppression-type polls that they've been putting out, with Biden up by 15% here, 12% there. That's not true. The polls are definitely tightening up. And I think that you're going to start seeing the Democrats are going to start changing their messaging somewhat, little by little. And they're going to do it according to how the polls are shifting. You notice that out in Portland, you haven't heard the kind of heavy-duty rioting that was occurring for 60 days straight. That's sort of been lessened somewhat. And there's no question in my mind, and one of your prior callers indicated that he felt that there was some connection between the governor and or mayor and the elements, I think that's the word he used, to describe the savages out there that were trying to burn down the courthouse.
Yeah.
So, excuse me. And I think they're starting to become very apprehensive because right now the Democrats are on the completely 100% wrong side of the three major issues that you guys identified early in the program. They have the wrong side, period, the end. And the American people are not dummies. And they may like an individual, but you know something? They like the country more than an individual. So I'm looking for some good news coming November.
Mm-hmm.
That's how I see things. And by the way, I opined last week, I think it was, Tony, that Biden would not agree to any debates. And now the drumbeat is starting.
Yeah.
He doesn't have to debate because all he's going to do is tell the debates will be meaningless. He's just going to tell Trump how wrong he is. He's going to have to correct him. So what's the use of debating? So you're going to hear the drumbeat get louder and louder. Anyway, that's my...
Yeah, for no debates. Thanks, Jeff. I really appreciate it. Tony, weigh in on that, because you spoke about it, too, last week.
Jeff did say that, and it's akin to, and we talked about it last week, is sort of a heavyweight bout, is you sit there and say, well, you know, I can hold on my lead, and why do I need to let this guy in the ring with me? He could hit me with the haymaker. But I do think in the end, I know Jeff has said he doesn't think Biden will debate. I think that the drumbeat will be enough that there'll at least be a debate. I'll go back to something that Jeff said earlier. I do believe this, is that I said earlier, defending polls, that they're a snapshot in time. I think at this snapshot in time, they're not looking good for Trump. Look, Trump says he just downplays the polls. He knows they can't be great. I mean, he's pulled his advertising in Central Florida, an area he didn't think he was going to have to. The Senate races are tilted the other way. He's pulled his spots from Michigan, a state he desperately needs. But that doesn't mean he's out of the game. And so I agree with Jeff. I think that this race will tighten up to be just as divided down the middle as the country appears to be. I think that the president will have a comeback wave. And I think that this is going to be a tough election for either side.
Percentages of voters in the swing states, the battleground states, that are literally undecided? That is who you debate for. Give them something one way or the other. If you take that away, Trump wins. And that's what I'm making a point.
I think it's a much longer show, but I would argue that that folks answer the polls however they answer the polls, but I don't think that there's a big undecided in this country.
You don't think there is?
I really don't.
Okay. Well, you know, to me, there is, if there is, and they're in Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, Florida, that's going to tip the election.
I think a lot of that undecided I would put into the Trump camp, quite honestly.
Okay. Well, then we'll 631-451-1039. Joe from Brookhaven. Hey, Joe.
Hey, good afternoon, guys.
There's my man.
Listen, I love listening to you. I really, no, you are two brilliant men. People have to realize that. What they're getting here for free. They don't, people pay for this.
I say this at home to Cleo every night. A brilliant guy, you're getting me for free.
Hey, Joe, hope to see you Saturday at the Back the Blue rally. Hopefully you'll be there Saturday.
Oh, man, I certainly hope so. I'm going to get over it. I want to bring the kids.
Bring the kids. Bring them all.
You know, I want them to see the heroes. That's the biggest thing to me. See who the good guys are, because they're getting all this false narrative from who they think the police are bad. And I'll go back to TikTok, Spotify, and social media. But did you see the SpaceX this weekend? Did you have?
Yeah. You know, those two guys are something there. The guy, what's his name, Doug or whatever. The two our two astronauts, one Marine Corps, one U.S. Navy. Those are Americans. You know that? You see those two guys? I mean, those guys are so cool. I have to tell you, those two astronauts. I can't imagine. Doug Henley was one of them, I think. I can't remember the other guy's name. But anyhow.
Amazing. Yeah. And you know why I'm on a pink cloud? Because I sat with a couple of kids. I tried to get them in to watch it, and a few came in. And my little daughter, I think she's 8, and all of them said, I said, boy, would you guys like to go to up in a spaceship, Mars? And most of them run away. They're like, no way. I said, you don't want to go to the moon? Wow, you can. And then my one daughter said she wants to go to Mars. I said, you could be. She wants to be the first person to land on Mars. That you'd be the first person. I said, you can do it. wants to be an astronaut. I was so like, oh my God, this is America again. There's hope here for me.
There is.
There's hope here. But no, I'm listening. You got other calls or?
Yeah, one more call. Yeah, about 30 seconds left, and we'll take the last call.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I just think with everything you're saying, this is such a crucial election. That's the only reason I'm calling in. I know you got the Islanders.
Yeah.
I want to keep pushing. I want to keep pushing hard because America, this is our last hope here. It's so crazy in Portland. Tony kept saying, we get the point. And I'm sitting here listening while I'm working. I'm saying, what is the point? What is the point of anarchy? I don't get it.
No, there isn't. We're going to talk. I tell you, we're going to talk a lot about that at the rally and really praise those people that show up, how important it is. Joe, thank you so much. And let's take James from Calvinton. Last call. Right there. Hey, James, you're on the air.
Yeah, I just want to say real quick, you guys keep talking about the media. They lie about everything. They lie about Trump. They lie about everything going on in the country. And then you talk about the polls like it's from God's lips to your ears. Do you know that when they do a poll, a national poll, they ask 50 people and then base that on 350 million people, or they ask people on the street, non-voters? You got to find out who they asked and how many people, because you can't say 51% of the country is for Donald Trump and the other half is not, because 100% didn't vote. You can't ask 50 people and base that on 350 million. It's fraud.
Yeah. Well, look at the poll next time, because they do base it on a minimum of 500 a lot of times.
Yeah, I think the best polls are very scientifically matched up, and I think by and large, look, it's sort of like the weather report. Are they always right? No, but are they right a lot?
We're going to take a short break. Final segment coming up with Tony Coates before we take a Islander hiatus, which is what we're doing for a couple of days. I'm Tom Schiliro. I'll be right back. You sure the mics were off, right? Okay. All right, the mics are on. Who got in trouble with a hot mic over the weekend? Somebody did. Yeah. But you see, we could say okay with Alien Angle. We could say okay with Crowley, but we're going to say Monica no, Garner. I don't know. I'm trying to. The following are the words of Noel DiGirolamo, president of the Suffolk County Police Benevolent Association.
Police officers are already being targeted for assassination. Releasing their personal information to criminals will only further endanger them. Stand with law enforcement. Defend the police.
Your Island, live and local, with your host, Tom Schiliro, on 1039 LI News Radio.
And once again, welcome back as we round third, heading up to that 2 o'clock hour. Once again, our number here is 631-451-1039. Just rounded up to the 2 o'clock hour. Now, we won't be on the air for a couple of days, folks, because of the New York Islanders. And if they win 2 more games, they've clinched the playoffs there, which means I think there'll be another game on Friday, so they're trying to work that out. Or if they win the 2, they won't. I don't know what it is. But forget about it. We won't be here Tuesday and Wednesday. We'll let you know. Actually, we'll be back in the studio on Thursday. And again, we keep bringing up the backing the blue rally that we're going to have over there on Rayner County Park. Again, there's just so much stuff going through my head right now. And that's going to be 11 o'clock Saturday, August 8th on 174 on Concord Avenue at Rayner County Park. We're expecting a lot of folks to be there, a lot of elected officials. I just got a text message. Dean Murray is going to be there. We're going to have Dean speaking. Doug Smith will be speaking, and a whole host of other elected officials. And speaking about Assemblyman Doug Smith, hey, Doug, are you up in Albany right now?
I'm home, but I'm in the middle, and it's going on right now.
Okay.
Virtual public hearing on nursing home deaths.
Oh, yeah, that's important.
About it.
So what do you hear? What do you want to tell us?
Well, breaking news, because I'm actually sitting in the hearing. I'm a member of the Assembly Committee on Aging, and we started about 10:30 this morning. We had the Commissioner of Health come before the Assembly and Senate and testify. We have about 80 Assemblymen and Senators on the committees. It was the Committee of Health, Aging, and Government Oversight and Operations. And for about 2.5 hours, the commissioner danced and really deflected questions. He didn't have information that we had requested weeks ago. And I say we, I mean both senators and assembly members, Republicans and Democrats. It was at times a bit hostile. And then all of a sudden, the commissioner has to go. Now, he was under oath during this hearing. We had about a dozen more senators and assembly people, including myself, that had burning questions. Now, each one of us gets about 3 to 5 minutes to answer, ask questions. He left in the middle of that. And we're holding a second hearing on August 10th, and we're told he may not attend that one.
Well, so much for transparency in government up there in Albany. Who's happy about that, Doug Smith?
No one. My colleagues on both sides are livid, and it was a pretty hostile hearing at times.
Yeah.
I will tell you, we're talking about the 6,500 deaths attributed to COVID-19 in nursing homes.
Well,
which the commissioner actually testified is probably significantly higher, because that doesn't count those who contracted COVID-19 in a nursing home and then later died in a hospital. That doesn't count that amount. So we're talking about possibly a third of the state's deaths, and this commissioner can't even make 4 hours out of his day to come and answer questions under oath before the legislature.
It's amazing when a government official does public policy initiatives such as what de Blasio's doing as far as the crime rates in New York City, but people are dying. This is not about filling potholes. And what took place in our nursing homes was absolutely horrific. Tony Coates, question for our Assemblyman?
Mr. Assemblyman, I would say Harry S. Truman said, I never gave him hell. I just told the truth, and they thought it was hell. So take it to wherever it goes. Facts, facts, facts. I think you should... you're already been a yeoman trying to discern and find out what really happened. And I applaud you because you're doing the heavy lifting that it takes to get these bureaucrats to come across with information. So applause to you and keep it going.
Yeah, public servants, they have to be responsive to the public. Doug?
I really appreciate that, Tony and Tom. And the reality of this is, I entered the hearing this morning, and my thought is, There's nothing we can do at this point to bring everyone's loved ones back. Unfortunately, we're facing a pandemic. But the fact is, the state of New York, and I think you both know it, and most of your listeners know by now, had issued an order on March 25th that mandated that nursing homes must keep COVID-positive patients or must continue to accept COVID-positive patients. And so when the commissioner explained that, he was hammered by a number of my colleagues in both parties, Democrats and Republicans. He simply said, well, it's not that we forced them to take it. We specifically said no resident shall be denied entry. That doesn't mean you have to take them. It just means you can't deny, not taking them. You can't stop them from entering. And then he pointed to statistics in California, Florida, and Texas saying, well, they're doing much worse than we are. And he continued to deflect. So I have to tell you, and I appreciate to, offer this breaking news on air, but myself and a number of my colleagues are livid right now that he just walked out of this hearing. We may never see him again in front of the legislature to testify. And we were respectful. And for 2.5 hours, he deflected, and you would think his execution was flawless.
Well, Assemblyman, this falls on the governor. How else can we say it? The governor's responsible for this, and is responsible for the individual that decided that he doesn't have enough time to speak to you folks. You are the elected officials that are speaking for me and speaking for everybody that's listening right now. That's how it works in a democracy, unless I got my civics lessons wrong or anything like that. So your understanding on how this process works, and I can feel your frustration in this guy walking out. Absolutely horrific.
And probably, Tom, the 12 of us who were not able to speak, collectively, we probably represent about 1.2 million New Yorkers. So the voices of 1.2 million New Yorkers were just completely ignored just now.
So your prepared questions were not allowed to be, weren't put out there. Am I correct? Your prepared questions?
That's correct. And I had some good questions about why, for example, the commissioner actually testified. So his agency issues this order on March 25th. He testified this morning that the height of nursing home deaths was April 8th. But this order requiring that nursing homes keep these COVID-positive patients in these residential facilities hadn't been rescinded until May 10th. So my question was simply, why wait 4.5 weeks when we know, and the governor already said that COVID, against senior citizens is like a match going through brush fire. It just devastates communities. So why did it take them a month and a half to rescind that order? And apparently that's a question he didn't.
That's a good point, and I'm glad you brought that out.
If I could ask, what's the next step? What will be your next bite at the apple? And I guess also something I just don't understand about this, watching as a layperson who tunes into the media, is at what point in time do they come forward and say, you know what, maybe this just overwhelmed us and we didn't have enough information, or we didn't know the extent, or we were all caught behind and we're sorry and we were wrong?
Well, and I think, Tony, to your point, I think that's what those of us, and I spoke with, now this is a virtual hearing, so we're all in different locations, but I spoke with a number of my colleagues. We were flabbergasted by the fact that the response didn't include any of that, and it should have. It should have been, look, this is something we were tackling. It was, you don't have to necessarily admit that it was completely your fault, but to continue to deflect, there should have been something saying, look, we were overwhelmed, we weren't sure what we were dealing with. At that time, we weren't sure if it affected young people, and we had all these issues. We were shutting down the state. I think we would have accepted that as an answer, but to deflect and turn around, they didn't even mention the federal government. I was shocked, but he did mention about, half a dozen other states saying what they did, and my colleagues, some of my Democratic colleagues even said, why are we talking about Texas? Let's talk about New York.
Yeah. Wow.
So will you get another shot at another hearing, or did you wrap up the briefcase and go home?
He said no.
We are holding another hearing on August 10th, and I believe we will be expecting the commissioner to show up, and that we would urge the governor to have him clear his calendar.
Yeah, and hopefully everybody's listening to that right now, and just to see how frustrating New York is. New York, you got to turn yourself around. This is absolutely ridiculous. When you have a hearing like this, and you have our great elected officials, the legislature to try to find out some information. Things are going well. 5 days away. Doug Smith, New York State backs the blue. Ronkonkoma rally. People are now calling in, writing in, emailing. We just heard from Dean Murray. Dean's going to be up on there on one of our speakers. What are your thoughts about what's going on with that?
Oh, I can't wait. It's going to be a great event. I was at the Back the Blue rally in Sayville on Saturday. It was electric. I think it's going to be even bigger in Ronkonkoma. I'm so looking forward to you emceeing it. I think it'll be a great day, and I'm so happy that JVC Broadcasting, LA News Radio, and yourself have really been such supporters. I can't wait to see everyone. We do have 1,000 of those support law enforcement car magnets that everyone's going to get. So.
That's right, and I got to keep saying that if you show up at this rally, which I know people are going to come because they want to, but we have these magnets that Doug Smith's going to be giving out, and refrigerator magnets, just to show where 99.9% of the people are. Assemblyman, keep doing the work that you're doing. We really appreciate it. And we're going to see you. I think you're going to come into the studio on Thursday. I think I have you down for Thursday. Coming in.
That's right. I'll see you then. Thanks.
All right, we'll be talking then.
Tony.
Good job.
Assemblyman Doug Smith. You got to love him.
Yeah.
You got to love that guy.
He is a personification of somebody that works hard,
Exactly.
is always on top of it, eats, drinks, and sleeps in it.
He doesn't care, Democrat or Republican. You know what he cares about? People.
Yeah.
People. That's what he cares about. Joe from Brookhaven. Hey, Joe.
Hey, how you doing, guys?
Oh, yeah.
Listen, is that Howard Zucker? What's his name that he kept mentioning? The Commissioner of Health, New York State. Who is that?
I think he said that. Yeah.
I'm not sure who spoke at his hearing.
Yeah.
Is it Kessler who's the
Commissioner of?
I'm not sure who would have spoken.
We're gonna find
at his
out.
hearing.
We'll find out.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. But the second part of that directive that Cuomo put out was even worse. When he mandated them into nursing homes, but then he prohibited the nursing homes. It's the second part of that directive. He prohibited them from testing anybody. You were not allowed to test anybody. You had to accept the people coming into the nursing home, no matter what. And I think that's worse, especially now. That's all he's out there saying is test, test, test. And that was his directive back then. And it goes back to Governor Cuomo's incompetence. Yeah. He has, and he will not admit incompetence. And I said it before, somebody that incompetent in a leadership position should either save face, step down, and said, I screwed up so bad with that directive. Because it's basically everybody knew you don't put a sick person in with other people. No matter what in your life, you learn that as young. You don't go in with sick people who got the flu or anything. You don't put them in with anybody else. Why would somebody, and I said on air, why would somebody, if it wasn't a negligent homicide, was it malicious intent?
Yeah.
You have to ask yourself. I say at best negligent homicide, and should be removed from office by that legislator up there. And he even blamed the Republicans. Last time he was on with Jay Oliver about a month ago, he actually blamed you should do a list of how many things he's blamed it on. That Trump, the federal. And he even blamed the Republicans the last time. He said, they're trying to make political hay out of this. Anyway.
Yeah, people die. And you're right. It was Howard Zucker is the Commissioner of Health for New York State. That's who he was referring to. Howard
Is
Zucker.
that who spoke at the hearing?
I believe that's the one who decided he's going to be too busy. He probably has to go up to his house in Lake George or wherever they're vacationing and things like that. So we need information. We need information.
He's the guy who didn't have the answers when he was sitting there. Governor Cuomo turned over to him and asked him. He didn't know. Governor Cuomo had no clue what was going on at the time. Meanwhile, he didn't. What did he say? Stop the directive. Well, Representative Smith said it. It was a month later after all these people dying. And dying from right out in South Hole. What's that place out there? One of the places where first
Peconic Landing was a place that was very hard hit.
Yeah, that's right.
Yes.
That's right.
Peconic Landing. We knew from there, and we knew. And he did nothing. He did nothing. How could you be that incompetent?
And I guess the issue is that we've certainly had enough time to reflect now, and we've had enough time to investigate, and so it's up to our officials to come before legislative bodies and explain what happened and take the heat for the mistakes that were made. And I'm not hearing that. I'm hearing that it's a little too swept under the rug.
Well, he had to run away. He left when legislators were trying to just ask him, right? Yeah, the main one guy, I got to go. This is getting too hot for me here. He left. So Cuomo, he's got his own people doing the investigation. I think Jay Oliver had said that a while back. Basically, they're investigating themselves, and he said, nothing to see here. But anyway.
Yeah, and they did say that. Joe, always a pleasure. Thanks for calling in. Our number is 631-451-1039. A few minutes left of the segment. Take your final phone calls. Tony, I want to just jump back to this whole idea of who we elect as our representatives. Obviously, a person like Assemblyman Doug Smith. What a choice. Great, great choice. Out there working all the time, willing to take the time to call into the media, let people know, giving us this breaking news story that nobody broke, and we just did it right now, that the Commissioner of Health literally walks out on a hearing that is being done by our elected representatives to find out what happened. And they're calling it the nursing home scandal. That's what they are calling it. But this whole idea is that we tend to elect, I know we're bringing this up again, but I keep thinking about how incumbent congressmen in New York City who've been there for 20, 30, 40 years can get knocked out of office. But here, we don't seem to do that here on Long Island. The only thing that comes to mind, as you and I spoke about it, was Senator Brian Foley. At the time, him and I think there was another senator from Nassau County were the only two Democrats.
Johnson.
And they both lost their seats because they voted for the MTA tax. But does the MTA tax have more emotion to it than bail reform?
Well, I think, in the long term, 2 or 4 years is time for people to forget. And so sometimes these folks take a vote where they feel that, how much attention are people going to be paying to this one? Sometimes when a legislature or Congress comes in and they get rid of the bad votes in the beginning of their first session in the first year, that way they assume that 2 years later folks won't have the same kind of attention span, or they won't vote on that one issue. But back to Doug Smith, I'll go off the top of my head. Look, my friend Jane Bonner in the 2nd District in Brookhaven, man, that woman eats, drinks, and sleeps a district and is active and has her hands on. Ed Romaine is an excellent public official. He's got his hand to the pulse. I don't care whether you're a Democrat or Republican. Doug Smith does an excellent job. Steve Engelbright up my way, a state assemblyman, is right on what's going on in my district. I think whether it's Democrat, Republican, you have so many folks who really do have the people's best interest at heart. And those are the people that, regardless of party, people will cut them a wide berth because they'll accept certain votes because they know them and they've seen them and they know what they do for the community.
But I'm talking about these horrific policies that we're seeing, and the fact there's no question about it. The bail reform literally is an absolute failure. We've seen that, and now of course they're saying, well, we reformed the reform.
Well, it's interesting. This one's up. We're about to find out whether bail reform, the cumulative, the big three that I mentioned at the outset of the show. Are you with de Blasio? How do you feel about bail reform? Are you supporting the police in this defunding the police fight? Those are the big three. Anyone who doesn't, I think, winds up an endangered species.
But the police organizations throughout this country now are interviewing candidates to just let their membership know that this is a good choice, this is a bad choice. And they're getting very vociferous on this right now, because when they're interviewing candidates for public office, they're literally asking them, how do you stand on the bail reform? How do you stand on defunding the police? This is what's being asked locally by police organizations in Nassau and Suffolk County, and they're letting it know. Now, I've heard particularly among the Democrats saying that this is heavy-handed, they shouldn't be doing this, they're trying to literally control our votes. But does lobbying really do that? I disagree with that premise.
They're standing up for what they feel they need to do their job. So, look, democracy was built on everybody's voice being heard, and the police are very effective at making their voice heard. And so we can't argue with them. It's the same as the nurses making their voice heard. And I don't know. I've been to Albany when the casket makers have been up there making their voice heard on the issue. So it's the system. Look, this is going to be a supercharged election year. We will see whether that troika of issues, the defunding, we'll see whether it claims any victims. But in general, I think your point is very well taken, which is that because they have the money, because they have the name recognition, because they have the time, incumbents tend to win.
But people don't do the research. Am I reading too much? I love our audience here. They know what they're talking about. And I have to say, I wouldn't want to try to deceive this audience that listens to this program. If I was running for public office, I would tell it just exactly the way it is and let those people make the decision. But when you hear our phone callers, you've got to say, hey, these people know what they're talking about.
Yeah, and look, let's not forget, we have Ken LaValle retiring.
Yes.
Sheesh, he was elected back when Gerald Ford was president. And yet, between being at the meetings and passing out flags and bringing aid back to the district and so on and so forth, Ken LaValle made his presence known. That's an awful lot for a Towninger to try and take on. And so the graveyard is filled with people who thought they were going to be the one.
That's an open seat.
It's an open seat, and both parties will fight. And that's where your point about if this is going to be a Republican or a Democratic bent year in that SD, Senate District, is going to mean that the challenger, well, they're both challengers, but you're going to have to move against the tide of what's going to happen in that Senate district at the presidential level and higher.
That state Senate is so important, but not too many people are talking about the Democrats losing the state Senate. No one's talking about that.
I think cumulatively the Democrats have many safe seats in the Assembly and the Senate around the state, and so you're going to have that interesting argument, which is guys like Ken LaValle and John Flanagan made, which is we should be in the majority, therefore we will be the best voice. The Democrats are
but
now
the
trying to make
converse
that
of that
voice.
is to get some of these suburban Democrats to say, listen, this is where I stand. I want to see this bail reform done away with. I will never support the defunding of any police organization in the state of New York. They need to say that strongly.
Long Island should not be the tail. New York City can't be the dog. If you're running, you've got to represent here, and you've got to stand up to the interests in Albany.
A great point. Once again, thanks to Tony Coates here every Monday. I'm your host, Tom Schiliro. Again, we'll be off for a couple of days due to the Islanders. We'll be back here on Thursday. Just a reminder about Saturday, August 8th, Rayner County Park. The rally starts at 11 a.m. Looking forward to seeing everybody there. Everybody have a great day. See you tomorrow.
I'm leaving today. I want to be a part of it. New York